80% of B2B companies are producing thought leadership content, yet only a quarter say it's delivering real impact. In other words, 3 out of 4 brands are churning out reports, articles, and webinars, but with very little to show for it. Imagine putting in all that work, all that budget, and realizing your audience simply doesn't believe a word you say. That's the uncomfortable reality many senior marketers are facing right now. Welcome to Embracing Marketing Mistakes, the podcast that helps you grow your brand faster by learning from the missteps of the world's top marketers. I'm Chris Norton, and my mission is simple: to help you, the senior marketer, cut through the noise, build authority, and turn mistakes into powerful growth strategies. Today, we're unpacking why so much B2B thought leadership falls flat, and the single most effective strategy you've probably not using in 2025. This episode is taken from our bespoke sold-out webinar we held last month, where we worked with leading B2B brands like Equans, Key Group, Huthwaite International, and Keystone. Together, we explored why trust in media and brands is at record lows, why organic reach is shrinking, and why your people, not just your company page, are the key to rebuilding influence online. In this episode, you'll learn how to unlock employee-led influence, why LinkedIn remains the best platform for genuine B2B impact, and the practical steps to supercharge your team's online presence. So, as always, sit back, relax, and let's uncover the B2B thought leadership strategy you're not using in 2025-2026. Enjoy. Yeah, so let's first of all start off with who we are. My name is Chris Norton. I'm the founder and innovation lead of Prohibition PR. We are we're with the North's, well, basically in Leeds. We're sort of Yorkshire's number one PR agency. We've been going about 14 years. We specialize in public relations, social media, video content, and B2B content. We do tons of training as well. So for those of you that have been before, you'll know all about us. So that's me, William.
Yeah, you'll probably recognise me. My name's Will. I look after a lot of the B2B and the strategy work within the agency. And interestingly enough, what we're about to talk you through is a really kind of growing area when it comes to B2B marketing. And I think that the smart companies are the ones looking at how they can leverage. Well, I don't want to give it away, actually. But the smart companies are using the strategies we're about to talk you through to get cut through, because when it comes to thought leadership, it's a noisy old market out there, and brands do need to kind of cut through. So it's going to be super practical and hopefully super useful for you. Okay,
so your situation then. This is your situation as we've guessed it. You already publish traditional thought leadership content, but it's having a limited impact, and you want to make your senior team more influential online, but don't know how. What you will get from this session, we'll sort of started to elaborate on what we're going to cover, but this will give you what we're going to be covering. So we're going to look at all you need to build a case for growing you or your team's online influence. And we've done it for loads and loads of brands. So whether that's B2B and B2C, but this is the B2B session. We're going to look at insight into what the best in class are doing. Then we're going to look at practical steps. Will's going to walk you through how you can do that. So how to get started and what you can do. It's not expensive, and you can get it done yourself. The challenges you can face, and then the final bit, we've got one slide on if you want us to help you. There's a bit on that as well. So, Prohibition, as I've said, we're one of the top PR agencies in the north of the UK. We're based in Leeds city centre, right on the river. But we worked for everybody and anybody, from businesses of all shapes and sizes, from Barbara, the University of Oxford, Transport for the North, we did B2B stuff for, right through to B2C stuff like Watches of Switzerland, Goldsmiths. We do all of Yorkshire Water's online content, and we'd work for tons and tons of universities as well, because they love the training. So, let's first get some context then about what this means. So what is thought leadership? Well, original viewpoints and opinions backed up by data. And we often say to our academics that we work with, that's why they're perfect for it, because academics have usually got tons of data they've done themselves, and they've got an opinion, and they just need to put it out there online rather than just in the traditional sense.
Traditionally delivered via public relations, that's what we would normally help with, online or via real world events. So, whether that's speaking at, webinars or speaking at actual real life events, conferences. An important part of a brand's marketing and comms efforts. So, thought leadership, though, this is from Kerry Parker of Content Engine. She said, thought leadership is soft power, quietly building up valuable reserves of trust, influence, and awareness, which is kind of like, if you think about today. So today is, we've been doing, for those of you, if this is your first Prohibition webinar, we've been doing these since before the pandemic. We weren't the ones that did pandemic events. We've done events since we started the business, because I used to do training, and then we've done training face to face, and then the only thing that changed during the pandemic is we moved our events program straight online, and it made it a lot easier. There's now an argument of whether we should do some face to face and see you guys, because I feel that real world events are good as well. But what this point here is saying is that if you're sharing good content, like a webinar, like an event, you're building up the trust, your influence, and people will be aware of you, because I've got people that have been to our events 8-9 years ago in the real world, and they go, I used to come to them all the time. And in fact, thanks to somebody in the chat, Aid has said, I've been to every one of Prohibition's webinars. So thanks for that. And that's the sort of thing, you're building up trust. And and we know for a fact, right? Most of you out there aren't going to go, oh, we need a new PR agency or a new social media agency, or we need someone to do our videos, a different company to do our videos, because you've probably got someone. But hopefully, if you do have a problem or something in 2 or 3 years' time, you'd then think, oh, who do I know who does good PR campaigns or whatever? And exactly that. We built trust with you because you've been to our events. So how does Google Trends look at it? This is like Google Trends is how people are searching for thought leadership. And if you look at this goes from 2010, January the 1st, 2010, to the middle of July, 2023. And you can see it's absolutely, it's like tripled, basically, that people are looking for thought leadership, whether that's online thought leadership or thought leadership in the traditional sense. So what is the state then of thought leadership in 2025? Well, we've got some stats. 80% of B2B companies produce some form of thought leadership content as part of their marketing. So 8 in 10, amazing. But more than half plan to produce even more in 2025, according to the latest statistics. And then, however, only 26%, so a quarter of people, actually consider their current program very successful, and 2/3 say it is only moderately successful. So that's quite a big drop off, that only 26% consider it very successful and 2/3 moderately successful. So very successful is what we're aiming for, isn't it? And on the backdrop of that, there's a massive decline in trust in the media. We've seen this on and on and on. So with this data on the right-hand side, let's just stick to the right-hand side for now. It's Edelman's Trust Barometer, which basically measures trust levels in the media. It's by a PR agency called Edelman that we know well. We've actually interviewed a couple of the guys on our podcast. And you can see here that trust is at an all-time low. And we've put here at the top, UK has one of the lowest levels of trust in the media. It's now at 33% of people trust the media. It's really, really, really low now. So trust is at record lows in the UK, especially in corporations, so in businesses, and the media. However, and this is the interesting stuff, Gen Z is a bit different as well, but 95%, almost everyone, which is bizarre, trust recommendations from others, even if they're strangers, over branded advertising content, because most people see that as your as I'm old enough to remember corporate brochures and stuff like that. But almost everyone trusts recommendations from other people, even if they're strangers. While trust in CEOs and business leaders is also down, trust in regular employees is reporting huge increases. So people might not believe what me or Will are saying, but they'll believe what one of our team are saying. It's quite interesting that. And Gen Z are much more into believing what strangers, influencers, and other opinions are saying over traditional media, but basically because a lot of them don't watch as much traditional media as the older generations. And yeah, I mean, this is not good when you run a social media agency, but declining social, or when we say social performance, we're talking about organic social performance. So we started Prohibition 14 years ago, and it was it was called the Facebook, and Facebook then had 100% reach. You put those of you that are as old as me will remember you put a post out. It had, it might have had 1,000 followers, 1,000 page fans or whatever, and it would go to 1,000 people. Today it's at 0.03%. So it's really, really low. And organic reach of social media is going to drop drastically in 2025 unless you use your data now. It's the latest headline. And then you see articles like this all the time. Are the days of organic social media reach over? Look at what Musk's done to X for those B2B. We were literally talking about it this morning because I use Blue Sky, but I've been on Twitter since that started as well. And it is a social media, this ghost town at the moment, unless you've got the blue tick. So we've seen a massive drop off on all Twitter accounts for unless you pay for the blue tick, which then gives you reach beyond your organic following base.
And just to, excuse me, just to point on here, actually, we talk about kind of declining organic reach. Bear in mind, we're talking about brand pages rather than individuals pages. So keep that in your mind, because we're gonna kind of explore what that means later on.
So basically what we're saying is it's the perfect storm. Less organic reach, tons more noise, 80% of people sharing content, and then people just don't believe what corporations are saying. So they don't believe your corporate social channels as much as you want them to, or your adverts that you're putting out. There's a decline in trust. And the solution may lie with your own people. And that's what we mean when we started out. We said that this doesn't have to be expensive. This is about empowering people that work for you. So growing their online influence can do the following things. So if we look at the people that you've got, we can restore the lack of audience trust. We can beat the algorithms, because each of the algorithms, as Will's just said there, we're talking about company pages, but we're also talking about individuals' LinkedIn pages. You can beat the algorithms because individuals' LinkedIn pages do better than company pages. So content that's shared by an individual does much better than content that's shared by the company pages. Amplify your existing marketing efforts. Authentically promote your business. If it's authentic, that's a key thing in PR and what we do, and on social media. Any sort of content you do needs to be authentic, because people just see through it. If it's an advert, they see through it. You can use it to directly recruit staff and to fuel your pipeline or convert prospects. So yeah, online influence can do that. And it can make your content supercharged. So compared to content shared by company channels, and this is what I was just saying, content shared by employees, get this. So content shared by employees gets 561% more reach. It's reshared 24 times, or X if you're in America, 24X more frequently, and it receives 8 times more engagement. So content from individuals or employees is the way to go. I know some people might be worried to give the power of social media to their employees, but there is a way to do it. Are people the future of B2B social is what we're asking. So brand page social on the left here, you've got one. So on your brand page social media, whether that's LinkedIn, whether it's your Twitter, whether it's your YouTube channel, you've got one brand voice, you've got top line insights and topics, and you've got a company messaging and tone. Whereas on staff social, it's the person. And people prefer hearing stories from people. It's just the way it goes. If you think about anybody that you follow on various channels, it's usually the individuals you follow. You get deeper insights. The individuals have an opinion, which does scare some brands because you can't control people's opinions. But also, often individuals are much more authentic than the company pages. And basically what we're saying is there's a new model for influential people online. And this is the bit where I show the graphics. I love this bit. When I do this to academics, they can... About 80% of the people can name the guy on the left. Let's see if Will can remember. Who is that, Will?
That's Socrates, Chris.
That's
the
correct.
Ancient Greek philosopher.
Yeah, I always thought it was Aristotle, but I mean, who knew what either of them looked like? So yeah, from back in the day, the Greek philosopher, influential, had his own opinions, did a lot of discussions in the Greek. What would you say? The Greek democracy. I don't know how to describe that. And very, very influential, traditional space, influencing people in back in those times. Whereas in the modern world, we've got on the right-hand side, Stephen Bartlett, podcaster, Diary of a CEO, now a dragon on Dragon's Den, has literally just moved to America actually to grow his podcast even further, which is crazy. So what we're saying here is the influence has changed. It's digitally, it can change. Sorry, you're going to say something, Will?
No, carry on. Sorry.
You went like you're going to say something amazing. Traditional model then is so the traditional model was creating impact through publications, so working with someone like us, like a PR agency, or going out networking, or going to like real world conferences and speaking at events. That was the traditional form of influence. If you want to get people, if you wanted to influence people back in the 90s, that's when I started out in PR in the early 2000s. That's what we used to do. Whereas the new model now is creating impact through online channels. It doesn't have to be all online channels. You might pick one that you really want to get your influence sphere on, but that is how it's done. The sweet spot is to be right in between both. So you're getting media exposure in the traditional publications, you're featuring at speaker events, but also you're getting quite good engagement and profile on your content online. And what we're saying is there's been a rise of niche and networked. So niche and networked, what we mean by that? Let's look at the three types of influencers we've got. When we talk about influencers, we're not talking about the Kardashians and things like that. But if you are talking about the Kardashians, they'd be above macro, because macro is large influencers with a following of between 100,000 and 1 million. Stephen Bartlett's, I think, is like 4 million now. So he'd be even bigger than that, sort of celebrity status. But we're talking about B2B. So they have a very broad audience, a macro, but they're much bigger. They're up to 1 million, around there anyway. Then you've got micro, who have a following between 5,000 and 100,000. And they have a more niche targeted audience. So maybe that's, they're much more niche. So that would be where my sphere is. I'm sort of in terms of Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm in that area of influencing some sort of public relations, social media and crisis management. And then those people tend to be respected in their fields. And then you've got nano, which we've highlighted here, which is influencers who have got under 5,000 followers, but they get great engagement rate because it's much more personal, authentic, because it's a smaller, but they're great for niche, strong content, very loyal audience. And so get niche, basically, it can be really, really powerful for the individual.
Yeah, and really the opportunity, if you're looking at kind of building the online influence of your staff, of your C-suite, it is really the nano, the nano area, which is the opportunity. Realistically, you're not going to turn your CEO, unless they're extraordinary, into a macro influencer overnight, but there's plenty to be gained from positioning them as a nano influencer, i.e. a strong engaged following and influence within their particular field. So that really, from our view, that's the opportunity, or the initial opportunity at least.
Just while we're here, just to remind everyone, on the right-hand side, there's polls, and we're going to look at the polls. If you could there's 2 or 3 polls. If you could just tick the bit that you think, we're going to look at those in a minute to see what people have said. So if you could just do that, that would be great. And I just need to find this where I am on my slides. That's the right one, isn't it? Right. So who can be a thought leader then? Okay, well, you've got different things here. So we've got 3. We've broken it down to make it nice and logical. So you've got CEOs and senior leadership. So Will and I, for instance, and probably you guys as well, which can be one-to-one approach, bespoke plan and coaching. So we work with we might work with a senior CEO and help them, coach them through how to use their content marketing to get a result. And they're and then we've got subject matter experts, and then we've got right over here on the third sort of piece of the pie, regular staff, which is one-to-many, and you can do that. You can train those one-to-many. So instead of bespoke training with just CEOs and senior leadership, you can do one-to-many by playbooks. So like a content marketing playbook, you can draw it up to go, these is what things you can talk about. These are the things we'd like you to talk about, but you can give them a bit of a free rein. It's like a framework of how you can work in it, and it can make it really, really simple. Less is more here. You don't have to give war and peace, and some sort of training. This is a snapshot into what we can do. But if you had some training, you give training to the people that your staff on how to maximize their influence online, and it will help your brand overall. Which brings us, how the hell do you do that? So William, do you want to take over?
Yeah, and I think, just jumping back to here, I think the point is, anyone within your organization can become more influential online. We just need a slightly different approach depending on that individual. And Chris mentioned earlier, there is this kind of fear that everyone's going to go rogue and everybody's going to start talking about your business in the wrong way, or using your company logo in a way that isn't approved and things like that. And I think, you've got to be to a degree comfortable with that. People will always talk about your company. It's just they weren't always doing it online. They would probably advocating or complaining about you in the pub or at home. So it's just about kind of inspiring them and giving them the tools to do that online without being overly prescriptive, because the moment you're too prescriptive, people are going to feel like they're being forced to do it and it won't be authentic. So looking at where we need to start then, we've kind of broken this process down into 3 areas, which I'm going to go through in a bit more detail. So when it comes to building online influence, first of all, we need to look the part. So we've called it an influencer profile. So if you or your your senior people in your business want to become more influential online, their shop window needs to look the part. And that's about polishing your profile. It's about having appropriate imagery. It's about positioning yourself in the right way. And it's still amazing the number of chief execs that you find on LinkedIn, for example, that don't even have a profile image. They've just got that kind of gray silhouette. So the bar's not that high. The bar's not been set that high. Then what we need to do is position ourselves as an expert, and we do that through content. So we need to decide what we're talking about and how we're saying it, and we need to be kind of regular with that content. So we can't just post one thing and hope we become an influencer. We need to almost have a bit of a kind of a content plan and publish relevant and engaging content across our channels. And then the third part is the social bit. So a lot of people actually forget that social media should be social. It's not just a broadcasting medium, not just a one-way broadcasting medium. It should be about kind of two-way dialogue. So the third part is actually becoming active when it comes to engagement and becoming part of the conversation, whether that's engaging in other people's conversations or indeed starting your own. And if you get those 3 parts right, you will start to build your online influence. Something worth thinking about is which channels should we be on. Now, there's no right answer here necessarily. And we would always say be guided by your audience. So if you want to recruit, for example, school leavers, and that's your sole objective, then probably TikTok or Snapchat or something like that is absolutely perfect as a platform. Equally, if you want to engage with senior buyers or other chief execs or whoever it is, then probably LinkedIn is the platform. So always be guided by your audience, but really we wouldn't want to limit this to one channel. That said, what we're about to talk you through is all about LinkedIn, just because it tends to be the kind of de facto platform for thought leadership in B2B. It's a great platform. I'm sure most of you are on it. It's constantly investing in new features. The organic reach is really, really good on it. So we are going to talk about LinkedIn, but the principles apply to any channel. So I mentioned looking the part. It's not rocket science really, but really we need a really slick looking, polished profile that kind of lays out what we call our elevator pitch, i.e. what value we're bringing other people very, very succinctly. And the better your profile or the better your senior people's profiles, the more engagement they're going to get, the more eyeballs they're going to get, the more people that are going to follow them. So first and foremost, professional headshots. LinkedIn actually allows video profile headshots now, which are quite cool. I'm a big fan of the banner image as well. So most social networks, LinkedIn included, give you the opportunity for a banner image that sits behind your profile shot. So that's a good chance for either a great image or, typically you can promote any kind of campaigns or marketing activities that your brand is currently engaged in. So Chris and I, for example, have been promoting the Prohibition podcast using the banner image, and equally when we're running events, we might change the banner image to promote the events.
Well,
yeah.
And actually, for those of you LinkedIn fans on here, for premium users of LinkedIn, just recently, in about the last 2 months, LinkedIn have introduced a slideshow of up to 5 images on your banner to make your banner to rotate, to make it a bit more funky and cool if you wanted that. So yeah, that's a little feature they've added recently.
Yeah, and then on LinkedIn, there's a couple of points on the right that are really, really important. I mean, LinkedIn actually gives you a percentage complete for your profile, so it gives you a percentage score. So that's a really handy way of seeing if your profile is up to speed. But it's really important to tag your company, of course, any kind of accolades or associations that you're part of. If you're, a member of an industry body or something like that, that will just drive visibility around yourself and it'll allow people to find you. And then think about your LinkedIn in particular and other social networks to a lesser degree. You get the chance for a headline and you get the chance for a kind of an about me section. And that's, I talked about an elevator pitch. That's your chance to convey the value that you're likely to bring somebody. So if you work in sales, for example, you might say, I help connect companies with X and Y, and this is the value I bring. And ultimately, this is kind of people will read that and will make a judgment on whether you're worth connecting with. So think about how you kind of communicate yourself, and ultimately, what value are you going to bring people in connecting with them. LinkedIn, in particular, the biography and about section is indexable by Google as well. So think about the keywords that you use, whether that's your company name, your sector, your specialism. And the more keywords in there, the more likely you're to show up in the LinkedIn search and in broader Google search as well. And then final point on this, LinkedIn's got a feature called a creator profile. And that's for people that consider themselves influencers or creators, and it basically makes your content more visible, and it changes it allows people to follow you as well as connect with you, so people can just follow you to see your content. So that's worth thinking about as well, and it's literally one click. So our profiles, or our senior team's profiles, look the part. We now need to understand what we're going to say. That isn't just endlessly self-serving posts about getting up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym and journaling and doing yoga and all things that the Silicon Valley tech bros tend to post about. So first of all, it's worth looking at what makes an effective subject matter expert. So this is a poll of senior marketing people, and it asks them, what they think makes an effective subject matter expert or thought leader. This is from a Nielsen study. Now, what we're interested in is the kind of the pale purple, the mauve line, which is essential. So the first and top is they are easy to understand, which is fascinating, because I think a lot of people approach thought leadership thinking, right, we need to batter people with our knowledge. We need to be super, super technical. We need to show people how clever and intelligent that we are. Actually, it's about breaking down complex subject matters and presenting them in ways that are really easy to understand. And that's, that is the most important factor. Secondly, they challenge the way I think, which is really important. Again, there's enough noise online and on social media. We don't want to be saying the same thing that everybody's saying. Ideally, we need to challenge the status quo or challenge the way people think. And that's where the thought leadership, the leadership bit comes out, if we are challenging the way people think. They publish data to validate their position. So it's not just anecdotal evidence or speculation. It's backed up by data. Even better if it's backed up by your company data. And they say something new. Right at the bottom is to say things that are unpopular or controversial. So again, the misconception is we need to go on line and we need to go on social media and upset people and say things that are unpopular. You don't need to do that. Actually, it's about presenting new, interesting things in ways that are easy to understand and challenge the way people think. Understanding what your niche is really, really important as well. And again, I made the point that, we don't want to be saying what everybody else is saying. There's no point in doing that. You're just going to be another voice in the already busy world of the internet. So let's think about our angle or our senior people's angle, and you can sit down with your C-suite or your chief exec, and you can actually kind of work out what soapbox issues they've got to talk about, and then you can qualify them, and you can think, are they new? Are they different? Expert insight is key, and this is where subject matter experts come in, and you'd hope the typical CEO would have expert insight into certain areas, and think about how we present that insight. So we need to add value and we need new perspectives on that topic. And don't try and spread yourselves too thin. Don't try and talk about 10 different issues, because that's going to put too much pressure on you, especially if you're the one writing the content for your chief exec. And it's going to confuse your audience. So initially, why don't focus on 2 or 3 big issues and give them 6 months and give them time to kind of bed in. And really, when it comes to kind of media, and this is where your marketing team, where the marketing team can help, ideally, we need to be thinking in terms of rich media, not least because shooting a video with a chief exec for 2 hours can give you 20 snippets, which is a really, really effective and efficient use of time. And most social networks now prioritize rich media content in some capacity over kind of plain text. So video and micro video is a really good thing to do. When we say micro video, that's typically video under 30 seconds. LinkedIn's got some great features now. It's got an articles function, which is essentially an in-platform blogging. Chris, do you mind muting a sec? Thanks. LinkedIn Articles, which is basically an in-platform blogging platform to keep users within LinkedIn. LinkedIn is prioritizing engagement around that. You can do cool things on LinkedIn, like you'd have seen these document posts. So basically, you upload a PDF and you can basically scroll through it. And it's a way to present quite complex information, whether it's a white paper, whether it's analysis, whether it's research, in a way that's, and again, LinkedIn's really kind of prioritizing engagement around that. And of course, high quality imagery. Try and avoid using stock imagery. Even if you shoot something on your iPhone, that's good enough. So yeah, think like a brand really when it comes to an individual's social profile. But really, like I said, video probably is the way to get the best bang for buck. If you go to a chief exec or somebody in your C-suite and say, look, we want you to write 5 posts a week on social media, they're just gonna think that's too much time. But actually, you can put a camera in their face for an hour and just get them talking, and you could probably edit 20 or 30 snippets from that. Understanding your why. Now, essentially, this is your objectives for doing this, or the individual's objectives for doing this. And what we'd always say is, if your people in your business, or especially your senior people, are starting this journey, try and really get to the heart of what it is you want to get out of it. And we would recommend being as specific as possible, and probably selecting 1 or 2 key objectives. And this will just keep you super focused in terms of everything you do, the engagements you have, the content you publish. If you're not clear on your why, you'll never know what to measure. You won't know whether you're succeeding or not, and you'll be kind of super unfocused with your content. So the type of objectives, and these are based on conversations we have, some senior people will say, look, I want, ultimately it's about sales. I want to grow my pipeline. I want to sell more product. I want to set up meetings with prospects. A lot of individuals will use it to support their company's recruitment efforts, and they'll talk about the employer brand in an authentic way, and they'll talk about new positions and things like that. And it can be a really good way to kind of prop up your recruitment efforts. Equally, and you might say, look, actually, I just want to get more media opportunities and I want to get more speaking engagements, and that's absolutely fine. But the point is, think deeply about why it is you want to do this. And ideally, these objectives could and should dovetail with your company's marketing objectives as well. Now, we talked about kind of making the most of time, and if you are investing a degree of time and effort in training your senior people, you might even be writing content plans, you might be checking their posts. That's potentially quite a lot of time. And we would say, always think in terms of kind of integrated comms for maximum benefit. So let's say you write an opinion piece that's put on LinkedIn articles and published, 600-word opinion piece, 1,000-word opinion piece. You can actually get more value from that piece rather than just living on LinkedIn. You could potentially segment it into 5 or 6 wall posts with an image. You could use it as the basis for a paid campaign. You could also use it on your website and pull out sections on your website. You might want to shoot a video and actually talk about some of the issues identified in the paper in more detail. But the point is, all the effort goes into drafting that piece in the first place. There's actually the opportunity to sweat it a bit harder. And the more integrated you are, the more benefit you're going to get from that, and the more bang for buck you're going to get. A quick example: we work with a brewing group called Keystone Brewing. They own all sorts of breweries around the country, including things like Big Drop, which is a low and no brand, Black Sheep Brewery. They've just acquired UK distribution license for Hofmeister, that some of you might remember, which was a kind of a classic 80s and 90s lager, which Heineken owned. So we made this big announcement that Keystone had won the distribution deal. You can't read this, but you'll see this around. So Matthew, their marketing director, group marketing director, we basically crafted a post for him with an image about what the Hofmeister deal meant for the group, why it was such great news. This was then sequenced with public relations. So we then did a PR story around it, which landed at around the same time as the LinkedIn post. Each news article was then subsequently shared or retweeted or kind of commented on by Matthew. So straight away you're starting to see the amplification. A summary of what he'd written was included on the Keystone website. So there was then continuity on the brand website. And then following the announcement, we then, via internal comms, created a number of suggested posts for stakeholders and staff to start sharing about the deal, each containing key messaging, linking to the website. And then that led to things like this, which was lots of other people within the business talking about the deal in an authentic way. So this just shows how it can be really, really joined up. And other things we looked at doing, there was an internal comms exercise. There was an email taking this content to prospects and to customers. We're looking at doing a short video series talking about the deal and what it means for Keystone. But the point is, rather than just one LinkedIn post, we're then sweating it through lots and lots of different channels. So if you're going to embark on this, and this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour about how to do it and where to get started, the key thing, and these are conversations you need to be having with your senior people if they are interested. First of all, is how much time can they dedicate to it? So the worst thing is to kind of overstretch yourself, and you might get a sales director or an ops director or a CEO thinking, yeah, this is great, I'm going to spend loads of time on this. But the reality is they're incredibly busy and they might only be able to dedicate 15, 20 minutes a week to it. So we need to be realistic, and we need to work within the parameters of how much time can they realistically spend doing it. Do you need to support them? Do you need to handhold? Do you need to coach them? Do you need to help them with content ideas? Are they committed as well? And ultimately this comes down to making a persuasive case for why they should do it. And the statistics like the declining trust in the media, the fact that individuals can amplify a brand's message, all of those can become quite compelling. So it's about how you position it. And if they're not committed, then I would suggest it's probably not something they want to do unless you want to fully outsource it, which is an option. But obviously there's a cost associated with that. So it's much better to have that conversation in the first instance, rather than somebody goes hell for leather for 3 months on social media and then just goes quiet for the remainder of the year. We talked about objectives. So, be really clear on what you as an organization, as a marketing team, and the individual themselves want to get out of it. And the more clearly you can articulate those objectives, the better, because like I said, it will keep you focused and it will show you what you need to measure. Have a think about what resources you might need in order to succeed. And we talked about rich media. Ultimately, there is going to be a need for some video content, some quality images, that kind of thing, if you want to cut through. And, so it may be that you need some marketing resources or some agency resources in order to capture that content. Ultimately, let's say you've got a cohort of 5 to 10 senior people in the business who are going to do this. You want to be better and more interesting than their peers, and that's the challenge. So we need to do a little bit of competitor analysis. We need to make sure that the soapbox issues we talk about are bang on and are interesting and do offer a new perspective. And then have a think about what support you are going to potentially need to provide, or external agency support. I think with the best will in the world, we would train up senior team and then they would just get on with it. But the reality is they will need help with content. They will need help with ideas. They will want to know how to measure the success. So there will be some resourcing issues from a marketing team perspective. But these are all really, really important kind of issues to address, before you do the process, basically. So what we've done, I think, once you've kind of trained and brought on board a number of people that are interested and willing and see the value in doing this, it's really important to have what we call a strategy on a page, rather than over complicating it. We need to have a really succinct strategy that kind of reminds them of why they're doing it and what they want to get out of it. So we've to kind of bring it all together, we've put together this mini strategy, and it's deliberately brief. I think there's a danger with strategies that sometimes they're 40 or 50 pages long and they look very impressive and they hit the desk with a loud thunk, but actually nobody ever reads it and nobody ever understands it. So the point is, in this case at least, a really brief, succinct strategy is the way to go. Now you can kind of switch out some of these areas, but the types of things, and literally we would say print this out and stick it on your desk, and next time somebody wants to do a social post, they will look at this and they'll be, okay, fine, I get what it is I'm doing. So define your key objectives first of all, and like we said, 1 or 2 key objectives is about right. List out those challenges and considerations you're likely to face. So is it hyper-competitive market? Is it that your audience aren't very engaged in the week? Is it that you've not got good images? And this will just kind of keep your eyes open to the challenges you're likely to face. Try and define who your audience is as well, is it, and again, be really, really specific here. So is it FMCG, senior FMCG buyers in the UK? And the more you can, it's almost creating a persona for your audience, and that will just help you post content that's relevant and lands and answers your audience's problems. List out which channels are best suited to you. Again, don't spread yourself too thin. Don't be on Blue Sky, TikTok, X, LinkedIn, YouTube all at once, because all you'll do, or all your people will do, is spend your entire time trying to manage channels. So work back from where your audience are. So if it is, as I said, senior FMCG buyers, then perhaps LinkedIn is the right approach. If it's Gen Z Gen Alpha, Gen Z school leavers, then probably TikTok or Snapchat is the right channel. List out your tone of voice as well. And I think one of the challenges people have when it comes to social media and being more influential online is that they're very enthused about the whole thing, but the moment they start typing, they sound very robotic and they sound very formulaic. So try and think about the way you want to come across and kind of use that as a bit of a sense check for everything you publish. So do you want to be approachable, technical, friendly, irreverent, whatever it might be? And by the way, on tone of voice, over time you will get it. So don't try and force it. It may be that you feel a bit robotic and a bit contrived in the first instance, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. What niches can you own? So up to 3 is about right to start with. And remember, it's fine to cover niches that other people talk about, but you need to have a new angle on it, or you need to have a new perspective on it. I wouldn't suggest overcomplicating content planning, but it's always worth thinking about the upcoming quarter. What news, events, research, activities, speaking engagements, whatever it might be, product launches, what have you got coming up in the next 3 months that you could potentially talk about? And typically what's happening in the economy, what's happening with the government, anything like that is good to list in. And I mean, the worst thing is if you think, right, I want to talk about the spring statement, and then 2 days later you forget the spring statement's actually happened and you've missed it. You need to be organized with this stuff, and ideally, the more topical you are with an individual's content, the better it will do. And then final point is think about, and this is where marketing can come in, what everyday content can be used to supplement the bigger activities. So, let's take a chief exec's example. 40-50% of their content would probably be what we call created. So that's original content, original viewpoints that they will post, and that might be them at an event, it might be they're pontificating about a big topical issue, but actually there's a lot of content they could kind of repurpose, so that it might just be a case of resharing content from your brand page. It might be linking to blog articles on the website. It might be sharing partner content. And this can really help with the overall content machine. And actually what we want is people sharing brand page content, because that's then going to amplify what we're doing from a company page as well. So final point, never plain sailing when you do this, and as a few people indicated, senior teams are too busy, they don't see the value in it. There's always a lot of challenges, and these are the kind of challenges, without trying to be too negative, with just being realistic, these are the type of challenges you're likely to face if you're trying to engage your senior team, your C-suite, in becoming online thought leaders or becoming more influential online. So cynicism or apathy is quite common. I think social media, believe it or not, even though social media, the value of it has been proved many times over, there still feels like there's a bit of cynicism to social media. It's not a proper medium. It's not worth my time. Demonstrating impact from what you're doing can be a challenge, i.e. somebody might do lots and lots of posts, lots and lots of content. They might even get lots of engagement from it, but what does it actually mean? Is it making the phone ring? Is it driving leads? That's a whole separate session actually on measuring impact, which we can deliver. Strategically planning out content topics, and that's the importance of the strategy on a page. We need to be strategic about what we talk about. Otherwise, we'll just run out of things to say after 2 weeks. Teaching core skills beyond basic social media use. So, basically posting on LinkedIn is easy, but actually being really good at it does require a bit of effort. So, you think about Instagram or channels like TikTok. Some people are just brilliant at them, and they're really intuitive in the way they use them, and they can shoot pieces to camera, and they can shoot reels and things like that. Some people just aren't that good, and we need to kind of encourage that more advanced social use. And the final point is getting it to stick. So it's easy to get people engaged in the short term, but really we need to get them engaged in the medium to long term. Otherwise, it's just a big waste of time. And actually, a bit of a pro tip here, and we've learned this from training numerous academics and CEOs. If you, as a marketer, can make it a little bit competitive, it's amazing how it motivates people. So you might have an influencer league table. So, let's say we did this process at Prohibition. 5 people are going to become more influential online. Why don't you list how many engagements they're getting every month and how many new followers they're getting? And suddenly it becomes like a fantasy football league. And suddenly everyone's committed to it. Everyone wants to become number one. You'll have to do that very subtly because people will spot what you're doing. But yeah, getting it to stick is an issue. So that's a whistle-stop tour. Like I say, Chris and I, we deliver this as a kind of an ongoing coaching program that takes many days. We actually offer a package around this, and it's called our B2B influence package. And there's lots of different kind of phases of it. I mean, the first thing we do is basically work with a company's marketing teams, and we look at who those potential subject matter experts and thought leaders are within an organization in the context of your marketing objectives. And typically you'll have people that speak at events, they're open to writing papers. They've got really deep knowledge in certain areas that's got a kind of a more of a mainstream appeal. And we will identify who those potential people are. We will then deliver a training program where we basically train them on a one-to-many basis. If there's lots of them, typically that's for middle management and above, or more of a kind of bespoke one-on-one basis for the really senior team. And that's more of a kind of a coaching program. And as part of that, we will also develop a playbook. So we will give your team those kind of loose parameters. So if you're talking about the company, this is how you do it. This is where you link. This is correct logo usage. This is the type of language you use. This is what we've coming up that over the next year that might inspire you. And then the final point is measuring impact. So we typically do this for the more senior people. We would basically benchmark their influence and then re-look at that every 3 months. And typically what we see after the coaching is people's online influence just increases exponentially, and they'll start to get phone calls, and they'll start to get emails, and they'll start to get meetings and media inquiries and things like that. So as you can see, it's a really involved process, but if you're serious about kind of boosting your existing thought leadership profile or program, this is the way to go. And the smart companies are looking at how they can use their people as well as their brand accounts in the context of doing this. So thank you very much.